Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Eric Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health, and a certified nutritional therapy practitioner. Thank you so much for tuning in here, whether you're listening on the podcast or you're watching here on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in here to the podcast. This is the first time I'm recording this for YouTube, and it's very cool. I don't really know what I'm doing, but we're having a blast. I got the stuff set up. I got the camera. Usually a podcast takes me T-minus 2 to 3 minutes to set up. This podcast took about 45 to an hour 45 to set up. But no big deal. We're just trying to really open up the platform here. If you'd like to watch on YouTube, you can go on over to the Holistic A-Hole YouTube page, watch this. And today, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about protein. We're going to talk about protein and the good and the bad of protein, because there really are two sides of this protein story. There's the side of that a lot of plant-based people take, where protein is evil, especially protein that comes from animals. And then you have the side of maybe the more anti-plant-based, the planti. Oh my God. The anti-plant-based people, where animal protein is the bomb. And I don't think anybody's used the phrase the bomb since at least 1994. So it's good to be taking a little trip back in time on this podcast. But we're going to talk about this protein situation and just kind of like my growing opinion of what is happening with protein. Because there are really multiple sides of this story, you know? I'm finding in health and in nutrition, you know, first of all, everything is bioindividual. Everything is really about who are you? Like, what works for your body? Everything that we talk about, we always have to remember that it really just depends on like what is going on with your body. What are your genetics? What is your build? What are your habits? What is your body physically programmed to do? You know, you have people who are just going out there, and hey, I will raise my hand and say I have been one of these people. I understand, you know, this desire to just have the answer to everything, and, you know, to preach a certain lifestyle to people and say, you know, like everybody should be plant-based, or everybody should be keto, or everybody should be paleo, or everybody should, you know, count their calories, or whatever it is. And the fact is, especially if you've listened to my interview with Dr. Penny Kendall Reed, if you haven't, it's a couple episodes ago. You'll find it right there in the old Holistic A-Hole feed. But what you find is, especially when you start talking about things like genetics, you start talking about, you know, looking at something like a 23andMe, your specific genetic printout, and you plug that bad boy into these readers, and you start to see that you have these things called single nucleotide polymorphisms, these SNPs as they call them. And what those are basically saying is your cells are programmed to act in a certain way. And that's very specific to you. Now, there are percentages of the population. Some are probably more of the majority in certain respects, you know. But you have certain ways that your body reacts to certain foods and certain beverages and just, I mean, freaking bug bites, you know? So it's not like we can just say, hey, everybody works this way, everybody works that way. Especially when it comes to something like protein, because some people's bodies are built to handle a lot of protein, and some people's bodies are built to not handle a lot of protein. A lot of it has to do with the way that you... I just had a little, you know, one of those little, like, not burps, but, like, kind of, like, stoppage swallow burp things. And typically on, like, a regular podcast, I'd be like, oh, no big deal, just carry on. But now I'm, like, on the video, and everybody's going to see that. Really bearing it here for you people. But when it comes to protein and it comes to something like methylation, we're all different. We're all different. Our livers work differently, and we have to respect that. And so when it comes to something like protein, I mean, I remember when I was younger, like going back to high school when I played high school football, and I was all about drinking the protein shakes and the weight gainers, and I don't even know if they still sell weight gain powder, but when I was in high school, man, that stuff was hot. This is back when I was watching all of the. I was watching, or I wasn't watching, I was reading the Muscle and Fitnesses and the Flex magazine. I had like, 2 or 3 subscriptions to just bodybuilding magazines, and I was obsessed with that stuff and all the ads in there, the Explode and the, I don't even remember the names of the big brands. I remember like Now Health was a big one. I think they're still around. And I remember reading, like, you would read about like Flex Wheeler or Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler, these like old school bodybuilders, and they would always tell you, like when it comes to protein, it's like protein's the most important thing, and you gotta have a gram of protein per pound of body weight, so if you're like 160 pounds, 170 pounds, you're housing 160 grams, 170 grams of protein a day. If you are over 200 pounds, I mean, you are crushing 200 plus grams of protein a day. That is an insane amount of protein. Now, when I became vegan, that's when my view on protein really started to change because, there was a long time between the time I played high school football and the time I went vegan and the time I started kind of becoming the holistic a-hole. I mean, for a while, like working out was not a priority to me. Being healthy and, focusing on nutrition, it was not a priority for me. And so, I would just eat whatever. It's not like I was counting my protein. So I wasn't really thinking about it. But then when I became vegan, that's when I started to think about protein because you start to think about like, okay, well, if you're not going to have animal protein, like where are you getting your protein from? And that's like one of the big cliche, vegan responses you have to learn how to answer, like where do you get your protein? Where do you get your protein? And I'm pretty sure I have videos on this and podcasts about this when I was a vegan. And, you kind of are programmed throughout the vegan propaganda to learn that, oh, your protein comes from dark leafy greens. You get your protein from nuts and seeds. And you get your protein from, like plant-based protein powders. And I remember there was a book I read. This is like when I first went vegan. It was called Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis. And look, like I talk a lot of shit about vegans, but I do respect the vegan doctors. I think a lot of them are very smart. I think a lot of them are very well researched. And there's a ton of research out there that supports the vegan movement, that supports just plant-based eating. I mean, because there's a lot of research out there that promotes low-fat dieting. It's been around since the freaking 80s and the 70s. And, this is when America really we lost our minds. We were like, hey, we gotta have this this low-fat thing because fat equals heart disease. And so there was a ton of research out there. And Dr. Garth Davis, he was, still is. I mean, he's a leading voice in the plant-based movement, in the vegan movement. And his book Proteinaholic really breaks down, this plant-based leaning research. And what it does is it makes you afraid to eat protein. Like, I'll be honest, I was scared. I was frightened to eat protein for a while because of all of the things this research says. And then you can also find this on sites like nutritionfacts.org, Dr. Greger. You can find this with Dr. John McDougall, The Start Solution, Joel Furman, Joel Kahn. All the plant-based doctors will tell you the same story about protein, how it's, it opens up the mTOR pathway and it increases IGF-1. And this is like the cancer-causing stuff. This is the cancer-causing, I don't know, what are they, molecules or cellular reactions or whatever it is. The IGF-1 pathway, the mTOR pathway. I think IGF-1 is actually is it a hormone? Insulin growth factor. So it's a hormone, I believe. Either way, this is like they tell you like, oh, it's the IGF-1 that grows the cells in your body. It's what grows so if you have cancer cells, which we all do, we all have cells in our body that are very capable of, becoming, pardon my French, retarded and then turning into cancer. And really the goal is that with nutrition, I mean, if you're going to just kind of boil it down, is to have as little influence on growing cancer cells as possible. You might not, your nutrition might not turn you into LeBron James. It might not make you lose weight, but if it does anything, what you want it to do is to not feed in to the bad stuff. I think more than anything else too, this is like kind of what I believe with nutrition. I mean, I believe in living optimally. I believe in, thriving nutrition. But if nothing else, I mean, we're playing defense here. We're like Floyd Mayweather. We're like the 1985 Bears. We're trying to play defense with our health because that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing all the time. I mean, especially in 2019 when there's an onslaught of just things in the world that want to kill you. You know what I mean? You have toxic water, you got GMO food, you got pesticides, you got toxic air, you got exhaust fumes from cars, you got fucking 5G wireless technology, you got you got lead paint, you got fucking rubber and plastic. You got parabens, you got endocrine disruptors, you got all this stuff that is trying to kill your body, and it's trying to, turn your cells and make them fucking into cancer. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. You're trying to not have cancer, right? You're trying to just have cells that are able to properly detoxify. You're trying to have cells that, grow at the right ratio. And then when they've done their cell thing, they just die off, apoptosis. That's what you want. You want your shit to just, the cell comes in, fucking, goes in, does this little cell thing. And then when that shit's over, the cell programs suicide. Goodbye, cell. We don't need you no more. And it's the cells that don't get that message that turn into cancer. And all the stuff that I just mentioned that's coming at you, that's what turns into cancer. And so my point is that in nutrition, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make it so the cell and all of your nerves and all of your organs work properly to not allow your cells to do that shit. And so this is where good nutrition comes in. This is where the eating, raw, like a lot of raw vegetables and properly prepared food comes in. Soaking your nuts, baby. Soaking your nuts, soaking your seeds, soaking your beans, eating meat that isn't burnt, grass-fed, grass-finished, live plants and fruits and vegetables, and maybe a little bit of properly prepared grains. But again, you're playing defense. So my point is the point that a lot of these plant-based doctors, especially Garth Davis, makes is that protein comes in and protein ruins the defense. Protein screws up the defense. It's like what am I trying? I'm trying to give like a good sports analogy here. It's like being on a basketball team, and yeah, you guys can put up 110, 120 points, but you're getting still beat because you can't play defense. You can play a hell of an offense, but you can't play defense. You're just getting balled on every day. And that's what protein is. Protein's coming in, according to these plant-based doctors, and it's just balling on your system. It's balling on your apoptosis. It's balling on your enzymes. It's balling on all of your body's functions that keep your body from essentially toxic growth and toxic infestation. So the IGF-1, the mTOR, all of this stuff, and I think it's fair to say that scientists and researchers are still learning about mTOR. You can listen to interviews and podcasts and read the literature and see that they're in the middle of studying this. They have not come to conclusions. They've made observations. They've made observations about mTOR and IGF-1 and all these different things. You have some people that are all about fasting, and they'll tell you that, the only way to control your mTOR pathway is through intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting research is very suspect. I think most of the studies are done in animals, so it's not even done in humans. We don't even know. You have some people, again, who are like all for the long fast, and then you have some sides that are like, dude, we don't know what happens in fasting. So this brings me back to my point is, in health, you have good, you have bad with every single thing. Okay, so sometimes, you're gonna get bad in a thing like protein. Okay, you could be right. You could be totally correct in saying that something like excessive amounts of protein, they jack up your IGF-1, they jack up your mTOR, and this is, according to research studies, what causes cancer and what causes, terminal cancer. But you also have this side that's like, well, how bad is the problem really? And what are the benefits of protein? Because there are a lot of benefits. So this is the other side of the story, which is, you absolutely do need protein. You have reactions in your body. Your body is just a chemistry lab, and there's all of these reactions happening all day, every second, every millisecond, every millisecond, every millisecond. There is reactions happening in your body so fucking fast, and a lot of that shit is dependent on the amino acids that come from protein consumption. Okay, so protein is basically the final product of amino acids. And in the body, we have 9 essential amino acids that essentially make, I believe there's 20 or 22 total amino acids. But we have 9 that are essential that we can't make in the body. Like, we have to get them from outside. Okay, so technically, there's this disease. It's called kwashiorkor, I think is what it's called, and that's a protein deficiency. And you know where you see that? You don't see that in America. You see that in like third world countries where they don't have any food. So if you don't have any food, you're gonna have a protein deficiency. So in a technical sense, there is no such thing as like a protein deficiency here in a place like America. But that does not mean that we're getting enough protein. It just means that we somehow, as long as you're eating food, you're taking in enough protein that your body can still live. But let's ask anybody who's walking around, who's dealing with illnesses like, Hashimoto's, thyroid problems, kidney problems, liver problems, what's the other ones? Adrenal fatigue, digestion problems, mental fatigue, or mental problems, mental illness. A lot of times these are people who are not getting the right amino acids. They're eating food all day. Sure, they can go to McDonald's and they can eat McDonald's every single day. And you're right, they're not starving, but they are deficient in many nutrients, many of which would fall under the category of amino acids. So you have amino acids that your body absolutely needs, okay? And where the rubber hits the road is when you look at the plant-based protein and you look at the animal-based protein. So in plant-based protein, you get 8 essential amino acids, and the vegans will tell you, okay, because I've had this discussion, I've had this argument, I've had this as a defense when I was a vegan, which is, you get all the amino acids you need. You get 8 essential amino acids. But the amino acid you don't get when you are plant-based is tryptophan, because tryptophan is found in meat. And you know tryptophan, right? You know, you eat Thanksgiving, turkey, right? That's how everybody knows their tryptophan. And it's the amino acid, it's the chemical in turkey that makes you tired. So, you know, when you go over your family's house, your friend's house, your aunt's house, you know, they carve up that big turkey on Thanksgiving and you eat it. You have to eat it early, right? You know, you eat it at like 2 o'clock, and then everybody falls asleep on the couch watching the freaking Dallas Cowboys. And everyone's like, oh my God, it was that tryptophan that just put me to sleep. Well, you know how that happens? Well, let me also say this. People aren't falling asleep because of the tryptophan. They're falling asleep because they ate a shit ton of food. You're not falling asleep immediately because of tryptophan. That's not how tryptophan works. There's a lot of things that need to happen for tryptophan to put you to sleep. And it's not going to happen at 2 in the afternoon. The reason you fall asleep is because you eat the turkey, and then you eat the stuffing, you eat the potatoes, you eat the gravy, you eat the bread-based this or the wheat-based that or the sweet potato thing or whatever it is. You eat the cranberry sauce, all this stuff that's full of, you know, sugar and carbohydrates. You get a giant fucking rush of energy, a nice bam. You feel great because you just ate a bunch of food, and then your insulin drops, and then you're just out. That's how Thanksgiving works. Okay, that's not how tryptophan works. What happens with tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin. What are we looking at here? Okay, tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin. What does that mean? Okay, so what that means is when you eat meat, right? When you eat, turkey, it's in beef, it's in chicken, I think it's in fish, I think it's in basically every meat that you can eat, okay? When you eat tryptophan, tryptophan gets converted in your body to serotonin, right? So serotonin, that's the beautiful happy chemical. That's what we need. We need a lot of serotonin in our lives, right? This is a multi-billion-dollar drug market. Serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. Is it selective serotonin or serotonin selective? I think it's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, okay? So this is what antidepressants are. Why does that matter? Because people who are depressed or who have a chemical imbalance, they don't have enough serotonin in the brain, right? So what or in their brain, what happens is, and a lot of this is because of diet. It could be because a lot of things. I'm not just gonna say diet. It could be because of lifestyle. It could be because of, chemical exposure. It could be because of vaccines. Could be because, your mother drank while she was pregnant with you. Could be because your mom was depressed or something. It could be, a million things. Also, I would say it is pretty presumptuous of nutritionists and dietitians to say that all of this is caused because of diet. I mean, there are pieces of truth to that, but then there's pieces of a lot of different things, like all this stuff I just mentioned, that will play into something like a chemical imbalance, right? So the serotonin, okay, so depressed people don't have enough serotonin in their brain. So what happens is the serotonin, the serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor, the SSRI, basically makes it so that, in your brain, what happens is when you have serotonin, it doesn't just hang out in your brain forever. Okay, you would have just, a buildup of insane amounts of serotonin, and your brain would just bust out of your skull, and you would leak out serotonin. So what happens is your brain basically uses the serotonin, goes into the serotonin, receptor on the brain cell. Brain cell's like, boom, got some serotonin, feeling happy. And then it gets rid of the serotonin, goes back through, I believe, your liver, gets flushed out, and you poop it out, okay? The serotonin, the SSRI, what it does is it says, not so fast, serotonin. We ain't going to let you leave just like that. So what it does is it blocks the receptor so that the serotonin just kind of hangs out in your brain longer, right? It just stays in your brain. It doesn't go through the full process. And I could see as a drug company on paper why that would make sense because, hey, you know, if the serotonin's not leaving, we got that serotonin here. It's like it basically kidnaps serotonin and makes it stay in your brain. And serotonin's like, we don't work like that. So what we're going to do instead, because there are other serotonin, there are other receptors in your brain that the serotonin can start latching onto that it's not supposed to latch onto. And one of those can be the what do you call them? The receptors that can actually lead to negative feelings. So this is why, which could make the, which is why when you see like an antidepressant commercial and they start listing all the different side effects, which by the way, that is most of a antidepressant commercial. Let's stop pretending like an antidepressant commercial is promoting antidepressants. An antidepressant commercial is like 5%, 5% promoting an antidepressant. It's like 85%, side effects, and then it's like 10% a guy, rowing a freaking boat, or like running with a dog on the beach, or getting a slice of pizza in a restaurant, or it's like no, I was gonna say what's the guy's name from Goodfellas? Ray, fucking what's his name? He was for the Chantix. He was the cigarette guy, cigarette commercial, whatever. Either way, serotonin is the happy chemical. That's where we were with this whole thing. So serotonin's the happy chemical. Boom, it's in your brain. You flush it out, you poop it out, it's gone. On to the next, right? So tryptophan gets converted to serotonin, happens all there in your gut, okay? 90% of the serotonin that ends up in your brain starts in your gut because of the conversion into tryptophan, from tryptophan into serotonin. And then the other thing I should mention that happens to serotonin is it isn't totally drawn off because it actually gets converted into melatonin once the serotonin process is done. And then that's what makes you go to sleep, okay? So tryptophan doesn't make you tired at turkey time. Tryptophan takes a little while to get to the melatonin. That's what makes you fall asleep at night. Woo! Okay. So tryptophan is a very important amino acid. You got to have it. That's a very important part of protein. So if you're just saying like, hey, don't eat a lot of protein, well, especially if you're saying don't eat a lot of animal protein, what you're saying is, well, don't get all the 9 essential amino acids. And tryptophan is just one of the 9. I mean, the other amino acids too, they build bones, they build muscle, they help enzymatic reactions, they make digestion work. I mean, they help your detoxification, they help your immune system, they help build white blood cells. I mean, you need amino acids for so many different things, okay? So to just say don't get a lot of protein, it's really stupid because you're just saying like, hey, don't feed your body the shit that it needs to work properly as a body. And no, plant-based and vegan people, I don't buy when you tell me, oh, I got plenty of protein, I feel great. I don't buy that shit. I don't think you feel as good as you say you do. And I think the feel good that you think you're experiencing is a fraction of the feel good that you could be at. And I would also go to the other side and say the people who are eating too much protein, the people who are getting the protein at like a gram of protein per body weight, I think what you're doing is you're also experiencing the negative side of too much protein. With everything, by the way, there is a positive and there's a negative. Or there is a deficiency and there's a toxicity. There's like a Goldilocks zone of how much you're supposed to have. And I believe like is it the World Health Organization or the one of these organizations, they make the case that it's there is some like standard amount that you should be getting, which is like 0.7 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if you weigh like 150 pounds, you should be that. I think in kgs, that's like what, 70 to 80 kgs, which means you should be getting like somewhere between 50 and 60. I think that's like real rough math I just did right there. So if you're getting a pound, if you're getting a gram of protein per pound of body weight, because you heard that's what you're supposed to do, or if you're trying to be a bodybuilder or whatever it is, you're not getting, you're getting way too much protein. And this is why you get fat. When you start getting toxic amounts of protein, you start gaining weight. You know, this is another big thing with the keto community. Keto is all about low protein. It's about low carb or no carb, and it's about low protein, because protein, oh boy, protein, when you eat it, you only have, again, a certain amount your body can utilize. And then once it's utilized, all that protein, and it's broken it up into the amino acids, and you're getting, you know, the tryptophan and the tyrosine and the taurine and the all the amino acids, the glycine, your body doesn't need anymore. It's got it. It got what it needed. So what's going to happen now is your body's going to start storing that shit as fat. Starts storing it as triglycerides. It starts going to your adipose tissue, okay? It goes to your muscle, and then it goes to your adipose tissue. So the reason why it doesn't work for ketosis is because when you start trying to get into ketosis, as in like you're not taking in enough glucose, because that's what the keto diet is. When you start getting into ketosis, the body, it's the inherent intelligence of the body is looking for glucose to burn. Okay, your body's like a crackhead. Okay, your body's innate intelligence is like a crackhead, and your body, you're not going to convince a crackhead to start drinking green, to give up crack and just give up green smoothies. Okay, the crackhead is going to look for the crack first, and then when it can't find the crack first, it'll be like, all right, fuck it, I'll have the green smoothie. I think that's how crack works. Your body's the same way, in the sense that the glucose is the crack. It's like this fast burning thing. It's like, keep the good times going, man. It's like fucking Studio 54. It's like, man, we are partying. We're like, gonna have some glucose now. Gonna party. Gonna put that fat ass up in that chair now. Let's do it. Okay? And so it's looking for glucose. And then when it doesn't find glucose, the next place it goes is to the protein stores, the triglycerides. So, or the stored triglycerides that were once amino acids. So the stored amino acids now get broken down once there's no glucose around. The body turns the amino acids into glucose through gluconeogenesis, okay? So now your body, basically what it did was it gave the message that it wants glucose, because remember, your body's a crackhead. It went looking for glucose, couldn't find any glucose, because you're doing something like the Atkins diet, okay, which is low carb, but high protein, high fat, animal meat, basically. Couldn't find, you're trying to burn fat. This is why you're doing this. So your body goes looking for carbohydrates, can't find any. So the next place it goes doesn't go to burn the fat, it goes to burn the protein. So what it doesn't just burn protein, it goes and it turns that protein into carbohydrates, which does what? Which raises your insulin, okay? And then your insulin basically gets rid of all that shit and turns it, you have the glucose, it basically just turns back into fat. It turns back into fat. So, or the glucose gets okay, I'm mixing this all up. I know I'm a little all over the place. I'm dealing with cameras and lights and shit right now. Okay. Your body loves fucking glucose. It loves it. It loves sugar, right? It wants the sugar, but when it can't find it, it goes to the protein. It turns the protein into sugar. Your insulin comes out, and it's like, holy shit, we got sugar in the blood. Get rid of it. And what does it do? Okay, your body went through gluconeogenesis, turned the protein into sugar, sugar in the blood, insulin comes in, takes the sugar in the blood. Where does it put the sugar in the blood? Puts it right on that fat ass. Right there. So this is why the keto people don't like the protein, okay? Now, if you're getting insane amounts of protein, if you're getting the 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, man, you got a lot of fucking raw materials for your insulin to work with. okay? And it's putting it right back on that fat ass. So when you start getting into those high levels of protein, now this is where you're basically defeating yourself. You've gotten a toxic load of protein. So what you need to do with the protein is you got to stay in that Goldilocks zone. I think the 0.7 grams of protein per kg of body weight, I think that's a fair assessment. I think, in overall somewhere between 40 and 70 grams of protein, depending on your size, how your body specifically works. I think that's like a good place to be because, look, the other thing is you got to be human. So every day you're not gonna get the right amount of protein. You're not getting the same amount of protein every single day. Some days you might get more protein. Some days you might get less protein. Some days you might go out for brunch and, get a chicken fried steak and fucking down that shit. And I don't advocate chicken fried steak. I don't advocate fried anything. But, hey, you're a goddamn human being. You go out, you get a chicken fried steak, you get a burger, you get a double burger, you get whatever you get, okay? You got an insane amount of protein happening. And then some days you might be like, all right, we're going to take it easy on the protein, and maybe you just have a little bit of sardines or tuna fish or something. So it's always changing. But as long as you're like in the average of like 40 to 70 grams of protein, you're doing good. You're getting those amino acids. The other thing that's huge about protein that I didn't realize until recently are the mental health benefits of protein. So this is, again, where tryptophan comes in, because tryptophan works in your brain when it gets turned into serotonin, and then it works even better when it gets turned into melatonin, which is what puts you to sleep at night. Then you also have things like taurine. Okay, taurine is like a mellowing amino acid. I think like taurine and glycine. Let's go with taurine. Just taurine is a calming thing. So, if you are like a strung out person, if you're like a big coffee drinker, and you're big on like I shouldn't say coffee drinker. Let me reverse that. If you're like a big alcoholic, you're like a big booze drinker, you like the mellowing effect of alcohol. You need like a couple glasses of wine at night. You might be low. You might be low on things like taurine. Okay, so taurine's gonna like chill you out. It's gonna like mellow you out. That's an amino acid. You get that from protein, right? Or maybe you are like you're the other side. Maybe you're like a stimulant person, right? You're like a coffee drinker, or you're a cokehead or whatever, and you're trying to get off that shit. Well, tyrosine is gonna help you out. Okay, again, that's found in protein. So when we talk about protein and we start talking about like, if you're doing like the keto diet and you're super low in protein, well, you're missing out on a lot of these amino acids. Now, you can supplement. You should be supplementing, right? You should be. I know, you went out, you heard about the keto diet, everyone's doing it, everyone's getting ripped, they're on fucking Instagram, they're showing their abs, they're doing toe-to bars at their CrossFit class. You're like, holy shit, I need to get on that level. And you just decide you're gonna go keto. You went out, you bought yourself a bunch of bacon, eggs, coconut oil, fucking cottage cheese, string cheese, fucking ham, all this crazy shit I see people buy on the keto diet, mozzarella sticks, all this stuff, right? And you're like, I'm gonna do keto. Well, guess what? If you're not getting the protein you need, you're robbing your brain of a lot of very precious chemicals. Okay, so I don't know if there's any studies right now out there about the keto diet and mental health. I would imagine there will be some, if not in the process of doing some right now, because that's a thing they really have to look at when it comes to like the safety of any diet, especially something like the keto diet, which is so restrictive in a lot of different ways. And the same thing with the vegans. If you're vegan and you want to stay vegan, you got to supplement with these amino acids, right? I know if you're a vegan, supplementing is kind of like a thing that a lot of vegans refuse to do. I refuse to do it because I thought the vegan diet was so perfect that I didn't need to supplement. But you gotta supplement, okay? You gotta get these amino acids in your brain. You go get some L-tryptophan, some L-tyrosine, 5-HTP. 5-HTP is like another version of tryptophan. I think it's the tryptophan. It's the thing that tryptophan turns into, and then before it turns into serotonin. So you want to get that 5-HTP going, the L-tyrosine, the L-taurine, the glycine. I mean, they've got amino acid, supplements you can get. You can get the branch-chained amino acids. Those are for I forget what those are, but those are like the basics of like the big muscle builders. Okay. And by the way, I've read some studies that compare like whey protein to branch-chain amino acids, and it's really kind of like a wash, So if you're like I've started taking whey protein to get that shit in the morning, and I do that because it's good to take good protein in the morning. By the way, protein in the morning is absolutely essential. You need protein in the morning because when you get these high shots of cortisol first thing in the morning, because that's how you wake up, protein blunts cortisol. So you should not be eating a high carb breakfast. You shouldn't be eating carbs at all in the morning, okay? If you're going to be like, how do I optimize my body to work right? Well, first of all, work with your body's natural circadian rhythm. No matter what your diet is, that's not going anywhere. So you need to work with your body's natural circadian rhythm. Oh, shit. Let's take this over here. Work with your body's natural circadian rhythm, because that's going to make, that's your body. You can't fight your body. Your body's going to say, we got high cortisol going here. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It's a storage hormone. If you've got sugar in your bloodstream, that's going to basically amp up. It's basically your insulin after your insulin. So if your insulin goes in and takes all of the sugar in your blood, stores it into the muscles, into the adipose tissue, cortisol is going to come back and just do it all over again. So you want to chill on carbohydrates in the morning when your cortisol is highest. How do you blunt that? You blunt it with protein, right? You blunt it with protein, you blunt it with fat. And then throughout the day, you start throwing on some more carbohydrates. But high protein in the morning, absolutely essential. Again, know the difference between protein deficiency, protein toxicity. Too much protein, too little protein. We want to find it somewhere in the middle because it is essential. And if you're deciding to go plant-based, if you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, hey, that's commendable, good for you. You love the animals, you think you're saving the environment, whatever you're doing, that's your choice. But also get yourself some supplementation, get yourself some of that pea protein and then some L-tryptophan, and you should be okay. So these are my thoughts on protein. It's an interesting topic because I think in the nutrition world, when people want to know about nutrition, one of the first places they go is protein. It's the thing we hear most about, especially when it comes to like losing weight and bodybuilding and all this stuff. But there really is a lot of nuance to it. And the more you understand about it, the better your body's going to work, I would say beware of any diet or any nutritionist or any of these people who are either like ridiculously for or ridiculously against protein. Okay, it's just a tool. It's a tool in the belt. It's a tool in your body's belt. You're not going to be protein deficient. You're not going to be like protein, like you didn't get enough protein. As long as you're eating food, you're going to get protein. Okay, there's protein in fucking nuts. There's protein in lettuce. There's protein literally in everything. But if you want the protein that's going to make your body work optimally, first of all, again, get yourself a 23andMe, figure out how your body works right, and then just keep your mind open to all the proteins you can have, understand what your body needs, and then give it that nutrition. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I tried a new setup here with the video. The video actually ended about 10 minutes ago. So I'm going to put on what I can. I'll probably cut it up in clips or whatever and then, put it on Instagram and YouTube. I'm still kind of messing with the format here. I'd love to know what you guys think. Please find me on all the social mediums, Facebook, Holistic A-Hole. Also join the Holistic A-Hole's Facebook group. Instagram at Holistic A-Hole. That's probably where I do most of my work. Twitter at Holistic A-Hole, and then find Holistic A-Hole on YouTube. Got new YouTube videos coming out every single week. And if you're interested in working with me for some one-on-one nutrition coaching, feel free to reach out to holistic.a.hole@gmail.com. Again, that's holistic.a.hole@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for listening. Share this with the people you love. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Go on over to iTunes, leave a nice 5-star review. Why wouldn't you do that? And take a nice little binge through the old Holistic A-Hole episodes. There's a lot of great stuff there, a lot of good knowledge to learn, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace.